In our busy, everyday world, we sometimes find ourselves faced with questions about life, family, work, and even God. For Christians, answers can be found in a relationship with Jesus Christ. It's a relationship that reveals new avenues towards finding answers, a relationship that helps make sense of the mysteries we sometimes face. St. Jerome said that ignorance of Scripture is ignorance of Jesus Christ. So, if for some of us this relationship is non-existent or needs to be rekindled, then we should begin it again. And just like any relationship, it begins with an introduction.
Okay, now let's take a look at some of what are known as the Catholic epistles. These are epistles that are generally for everyone, thus the name Catholic, universal. They're not specifically aimed at any particular church. There may be indications of a region, but for the most part, it's applicable to any and every church. First, we start with James, which, because of their general topics in dating and naming, we're not sure exactly when they're written. It could be as written early as 62 or so, but it may have been written in the 80s, early 80s, primarily because the idea of the mention of the temple, the destruction of the temple at 70 AD, it was a very important element. And if it was close to 70 AD, say within that decade, it would definitely be something that would be mentioned. But by the time, 2 decades rolls along, it's not, people have settled in with the tragedy, and it's not as big a concern, especially for Christian authors and Christian converts. James is considered in many ways sort of Christian wisdom literature. It's how to live out the faith. What are the practical aspects of living out your faith? What does this mean by a practical aspect of living out the faith? Well, it gives you highlights as to what's going on. How do you live? Tame the tongue. Are you gossiping? Are you saying bad things? How is it you're to live out this faith? It also brings into the fore this concept of the distinction between faith and works. What's the relationship between faith and works? It's the classic line that is, faith without works is dead. So what does that mean? Is he talking about the same kind of works that Paul is talking about? Or is Paul talking about the Levitical laws, works of the law, whereas James is talking about moral laws? Most scholars recognize that James is talking about moral laws, and so, and Paul is talking about works of the Levitical laws. And so there are two different senses of works. So there is no contradiction between James and Paul in this sense. So we look for guidance on how to correct each other, how to help each other live the lives. It's not just about you. You are your brother's keeper. And so you help them in a sense that so you can, once again, as we saw in Paul, make a judgment that this action is wrong and then help the brother out. Help them live by the laws that they need to live by. Now, 1st and 2nd Peter, we know just by the death that they're written by Peter, and many suspect they are. So it must be written 64, 67, probably in Rome or from Rome. But again, to everybody. They're kind of sent out to all the people. And most of this is about encouragement. Stay strong against persecution. Persecutions are increasing. So there is a sense of redemptive suffering involved too. Are you to shun the sufferings? Not necessarily. You accept these sufferings because Christ had to suffer. And if we're going to be like Christ, then we need to suffer like Christ did. It's something that, it's a theme in Paul. He talks about making up what is lacking. But we see Peter, encouraging the flock in a sense. And the same thing goes with the 2nd Peter, the second, again, written shortly after. Now, this is a letter, the 2nd letter of Peter is a letter that actually has some very key phrases in it, talking about, again, encouragement, but be faithful to the teachings that the apostles have taught, and reject the false teachings that come around. But this is that great line that we are made to be partakers in divine nature. And so he's talking about the goal of the Christian life, to be partakers in divine nature. And that's a key element for understanding how they see the faith and how important the faith is. So stay strong. Now, a letter that's attributed to a follower of James, you could say that the author himself calls himself Jude, a servant of Jesus Christ and the brother of James. So he's considering himself, he's a brother to James, and James is at the time now the bishop of Jerusalem, so he's an important figure. But again, what are the themes? Stand firm in your faith. What's the point? Do you just act on instinct, but you have to know your faith? No, don't act on instinct. Instinct is good, but you have to form your instincts. You have to be a fully formed person in the faith to be able to act on the faith. So once again, there is a lot of persecution going on. And many of these letters, the Catholic epistles, are encouraging letters that bring home the reality of living the Christian life.